Hello, all of the beautiful people out there, which is all of you. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about Plato and the allegory of the cave and kind of summarize it and put it into my own reflection and share it with you. So I wrote this down, and hopefully it goes well reading it aloud, because I want it to be natural, but you know, I have to read it. So, okay, so here we go. Plato uses the allegory of the cave in reference to education and the lack of it, by creating a scenario in which prisoners are bounded by their necks and their ankles, facing a wall in a cave lit only by a fire that lies behind them. So they've been raised in this condition their whole lives, and the only visions they are introduced to are what the guards choose to show them with puppets. But as the prisoners see only as shadows. So it's the wall, they're sitting facing the wall, and behind them is a fire, and they're making like little bunny rabbit puppet shows, and that's the only thing that the prisoners can see. It's just these dark figures. And the guards also introduce sound, but only as an echo, since they are in a cave, that the prisoners associate with the shadow figures. Eventually a prisoner is set free and shown the cave wall of shadows is only an illusion. So he gets unshackled, and the guard brings him over to where the fire is, and he's like, look, and then shows him the wall and is like, look, and just kind of leaves the prisoner there to kind of, you know, absorb it all in, and kind of, I know he's probably going, womp, womp, womp. This is crazy, but anyways, so he's shown the true nature of the figures, but naturally he wants to believe what he's been shown his whole life as the actual truth, because, well, that's all he's experienced as the truth. It's kind of like, you know, what if all of a sudden you were taken out of your workspace or your classroom or whatever, your home life, and someone just showed you behind the curtain, you know, like in Wizard of Oz, and it was just all these little aliens, and they were controlling us. Or this movie that we watched today in my philosophy class, which I only saw half of it because I was late, whoops, called The 13th Floor, where we're all just like little energy balls, like technical energy balls. I have to watch the whole movie to talk about it more, but essentially that's what it is that we're just kind of part of this stimulation system, and none of us really exist. We've just been programmed to exist. So imagine how shocked you, I mean, how would you be able to absorb that kind of information? That is like system overload, big time. But it would be really, really, I don't know, I would personally be really grateful, because I am a truth seeker, and I would prefer not to be ignorant or live in ignorance. That's just my opinion. So anyways, here's this prisoner, and he's just trying to take everything in, and then the guard is like, hey, let's go this way. So he's then ascended up towards the light of the outside world. There he can only grasp reflections, because that's all he's seen. You know, the shadows were a reflection of the light onto the wall. So his eyes need to adjust to the sun, and then once they are adjusted, he's kind of able to understand the reality that his life has been controlled and manipulated in a way to keep him comfortably numb in ignorance. So, you know, he's like, shit, I gotta tell the other guys about this, and girls. So he's like, all right, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna save my fellow prisoners and free them from being blissfully unaware of this life that they're living. But the prisoners prefer their reality and become angry at this enlightened man for trying to convince them of his truths, which he was not expecting at all. You know, you're trying to help somebody out by giving them some sort of information, valid information, and it's always, it always knocks me off my rocker when someone just completely turns the other cheek and just keeps living their ignorant state of mind reality, whatever. it's always a surprise for me, because whenever but someone comes to me with new information or introduces me to something that in a perspective that I've never thought or witnessed before, I love it. I eat it up and I look further into it. I mean, it just makes me feel like I'm in the step in the right direction when something is like an aha moment, or, oh, you never looked at it that way, did ya? I like it. I like that. I feel like my brain's working. I feel like I'm living, you know, as opposed to what people would say living is, as in like the 9-to-5 jive and the rat race. That doesn't seem like living to me. I don't get it. But I don't think I've been as socialized as everybody. I mean, as socialized. I know I've been socialized, of course, naturally. We all have been. But I think that I, like, when I was younger, missed a couple steps. So I'm proud of little me. Go little me. Okay, anyways, these other prisoners are so angry with this guy, and they're like, no, this guy must be crazy. What is he talking about? There is no 3D world. There is no, what is this grass or color? What is he talking about? You know, well, they probably can't even speak because they've been prisoners locked to the floor, facing a wall for however many years since birth. So, but this is what they're thinking. So they decide to plot a plan to kill this truth seeker, because they do not want to believe the things that their whole life has been a sham. Well, that whole scenario is related to Socrates and his death. Socrates was sentenced to death by poison for trying to introduce self-actualization through education to his students. The authority then felt threatened and condemned Socrates to death for trying to control and manipulate the masses, which is pretty ironic considering that is exactly what authority does. It's what authority is guilty of, and it still is to this day. In modern day society, we are subjected to many illusions by no accident. We have been socialized from birth to be a player in this game of life. But of course, we don't see this because during our path, we are given options, which in turn makes us think we have choices, which in turn makes us think we have free will. But we don't. We are in a very controlled environment that is suggestive of freedom, but is never attainable. The greatest culprit of them all is money. The illusion of money creates the cuffs on our wrist, but I will discuss that later. I'll discuss it further later. First, I'd like to introduce the process more in depth and how we have been carefully assisted to this idea of free will. So the most painfully obvious example of this is pregnancy, followed by childbirth, the primp and primer of complete control over our right to free will. Before we are even born, our mothers are bombarded with the do's and don'ts of pregnancy, the how-tos, and yada, 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 as if her body isn't a reliable enough source. Then she is stripped of her right to ponder the idea of natural birth by media-influenced minds that judge such character as anything but maternal. And I know you know those people. I've had this conversation with all different kinds of people, women, and some of them who work in the hospital, and they feel that a person who doesn't give birth at the hospital is jeopardizing the health of their unborn child. I think that is insinuating fear, putting fear into somebody who, it makes them feel unsure of what they naturally should know and do know. And I don't like when people do that, because it's just a control mechanism, and it's not fair, because that is like the one thing that women were made to do, okay? To give birth to a human being out of her vagina. That is the one thing women were created physically to do and to nurture. I mean, I'm not saying women are only for birthing, but I'm just saying that is physically what women were made to do. And when you strip her of that right, of that freedom to make a decision with her body and the child that she is carrying, and women actually listen to it. I cannot understand. But okay, so I'm getting into that. Let me continue. So, okay, especially because she's convinced by fear that if her pregnancy would have any complications, her body would not be as capable as handling it as a trained professional doctor would. Okay, a doctor who probably has had 0 pregnancies and perhaps not even a vagina, just to generalize, because you know, back in the day when this all started, that women were not helping birth women, that men were the doctors helping women give birth. So, I mean, I know we're in a totally different, we're in the millennium and women are awesome and conquering and doing things that men do, which should have always been the case, equals, but to generalize, majority, I'm going to say, probably have never had children and probably are men. And men, as much as you'd like to think you know about vaginas, you don't have one. And I'm not saying that a man cannot be, you know, professionally educated on vaginas. I just don't think that they could ever fully understand vaginas unless they have one and feel it and know how it works. Feels it in the works. Okay, so anyways, so then she is thrown into a system of instructions that is force-fed for her to follow in order to have a successful pregnancy, usually given by a man whose main priority is that you not inconvenience his life and time. Anybody who has had children or has dealt with doctors probably knows what I'm talking about. So then a due date is scheduled and will most likely be the birth date of your child, but not because your doctor is psychic, no, but because he or she is only concerned with the benefits this experience will bring to his life, and as the future baby will eventually learn once it has grown and prospered, that time is money, and baby making is a big time money maker. It's unfortunate, but it's true. So if the baby is not ready to enter the world on his or her conditions, the doctor will induce labor by drugging the mother with a medication that probably isn't fully defined, nor is it presented with information regarding what exactly it consists of, other than it'll make the baby finally get out of her poor body. I mean, I cannot imagine being a woman 9 months pregnant, ready to give, well, maybe not ready, but planned to give birth, and just being in that frantic state of mind because, you know, there's so many new things happening with your body, and this life is almost ready to leave your body, and it's been, you know, nurtured in your body for 9 months, and it's a very scary place to be, and you probably, you know, are just feeling so just out of it. You don't, all you can think is, I just want this child to be healthy. And when you have somebody in your ear telling you things, you know, and they're wearing the white outfit, that's what I call it, uniform, and you've been socialized to think that they know best, even though your body knows best. It does. I promise you that. You just gotta listen to it. Then you're gonna listen to, you know, this person in white who has, well, we'll get into that. You know, you're not thinking fully about what it is exactly that they're giving you and how it might affect you and where it comes from and what it's made out of. You're just thinking, okay, yes, listen to them. That is what I should be doing. Just like one-track minded. You don't have peripheral vision. You're just looking straight ahead and looking at this person, and they're like, do this. And you're like, okay. If you would have opened it up and looked around, you know, asked some questions, get some information, that would just be smart of you. Okay. So, to continue on. This is a perfect example of how the mother does not have free will, okay? If she had free will, she would actually see this situation is very controlled, while an ignorant person would see that they have choices between A, forcing a baby to come out when it's not ready with drugs they don't fully understand the origin of, or waiting in agony for the baby to make its way out naturally, which, you know, they can drug you for that too. The enlightened person would know that neither of those two options need to limit her in making the right decision for the health of her and her child. But since she has completely given up her confidence in self and instead blindly given it to a stranger with a textbook education validated by a piece of paper framed and hanging nicely on their office wall, she doubts herself and her body because the brain has been manipulated not to trust what is natural. It's sad, but it is so true. And speaking of natural, what isn't natural proceeds in the birthing process by basically restraining the mother to a thinly mattressed bed in an upright position, knees bent, legs spread eagle, while a doped up mother is being hounded to push and to push harder and harder. How she can feel she's pushing with the appropriate strength is unknown, considering she was probably convinced to numb the pain with drugs. Ta-da! The only thing natural about the birthing process is that it is naturally comfortable for the doctor. That is how this position was introduced to the birthing world. How convenient, right? I mean, like, you know what? That position is not natural. Actually, that was created by doctors way back in the day. I can't remember the exact year. I used to know this because I read it in one of my women's studies books, and I was just dumbfounded. I could not believe, because my whole life, you know, you see it in movies and media. I mean, you see it everywhere at that position, and they're in so much pain and agony, and they're just like, get this baby out of me. Well, yeah, that is actually the least comfortable position and probably the most unhealthiest position for a woman to be in while birthing, but it is the best position for the doctor. That's where he can get the best view and the handle of everything. And actually the best position from what I understand is the squatting or in water. But then again, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a piece of paper that was validated by some educational system plaqued on my wall so I can tell people what to do. But that's just what I read in some history books. The real ones, not the ones that you had in high school or college. Okay, so just pretty interesting little fact there. Okay, anyways, after the baby is birthed, which has a 30% chance of happening through a C-section, usually because of complications, while some percentage of that might be true, it is usually done for legal reasons. So the hospital doesn't want to be accountable for not knowing how to birth the child out of the appropriate location, which is a vagina, which is where it's supposed to come out of. Yet another convenience for the doctor, you know. If he messes up because he doesn't know how to get a baby out of a vagina, the canal, then they don't want to be held responsible for it. So instead what they do is they cut you open in your abdomen and pull it right out of you. It's a miracle, right? Not really. Not at all. It's very dangerous. But they feel confident. Doctors are cutters. That's what they want to do. They want to cut stuff open. They don't look at people like people. They look at them like, I don't know, things that they can cut open. Experiments, kind of. I don't know. It scares me. I think that doctors have, like, they get a certain part of their sensitivities taken out of them in the process of becoming one. And I don't know about you, but I like people who have sensitivity. You know, it'll be, the C-section thing is always like, oh, you know, we just wanted to be safe, or there's complications or something. And I'm not saying that that isn't true all the time, but, you know, they won't, the way that they describe it to the mother is they won't talk about the legal issue side of it. And that just leaves the mother thinking that she has no choice but to do the right thing and to go through with the C-section, or that, thank God that doctor gave me a C-section, or, you know, that kind of mentality. And all that's doing is allowing ignorance, and it's really cheating the mother of the truth. And I don't know, that's just a whole nother aspect of go into the hospital to have a baby. Not like completely saying it's wrong, but okay, anyways. So now that you have a little idea of how the lack of free will plays out while you're in the womb, how about after you've been gracefully welcomed into the world, taken from your mother, manhandled by strangers, and then put into the appropriate colored blanket based on gender? Yes, it all begins with your genitals. Blue blanket for boys and the pink blanket for girls. This creates the illusion that people are categorized by colors. Welcome, baby, to your world. Yay! Judgments everywhere. So the choice has been completely embedded in you, and unless you recognize it, it will stay embedded. And so it goes on with toys. Boys are given choices between fire trucks or G.I. Joes, while girls are given choices between Barbies and princesses. Now, if a boy wanted to expand his options and, say, choose to play with Little Miss Barbie doll, he will most likely be labeled as something frowned upon. So while he has choices and has the right to make them, he gets condemned and made to feel guilty for making his own choice, which could and most likely will lead him back to what is accepted as the norm so that he feels loved and accepted by his peers again. Because when you're a little person and you don't know anything, all you really do know is love, because that's what you just spent 9 months being fed from your mother. So you really like that feeling. It makes you, feel like you're thriving, because you were, and you are, and you should. Love is something that everybody should have. I don't think anyone should lack love. It's not supposed to go that way. So when you're a little person and this is what you've been accustomed to, and then you start venturing out, and little by little you're becoming your own individual, and then you do something and the people that you're surrounded by are looking at you, and you see and you feel this emotion that you've never experienced before, and it's discomfort or dislike or disappointment or something. You are going to make a mental note of that, never to do that again. So really, society has created this illusion of free will by suggestive options, but ultimately makes a decision for you based on many years of a manipulated, controlled system that you don't even realize, because it's become so subtle and it's everywhere, and it's been the only life you've known. Just like the prisoners in Plato's allegory of the cave. So, in conclusion, the allegory of the cave is an excellent analogy of exactly what our society is exposed to. While I only discussed it in relation to women and their pregnancy, it is relatable in so many ways that I could probably never stop talking about it. As I touched on earlier, the greatest illusion of them all is money. With money as our leader, we feel whether we have a choice or not. Okay, like I talked about earlier, which limits us in our true nature to live. Money is the shackles that keep the prisoners staring at the shadow-filled wall of reality, when, in fact, the wall is nothing more than an entertainment piece for the puppeteers, and the prisoners really have no purpose. But if there were no money, there are no shackles. The prisoners then see the natural light outshine the artificial one, and purpose is then upon them to be. They are free to be. So easy. It's so simple. It's so simple yet so complicated. It doesn't have to be, though. It really doesn't. Well, as long as we continue to let illusion determine our fate, we will always be prisoners, shackled to the floor, staring at the walls of lies, consuming everything that is fed to us as reality. Whatever puppet show the guards choose to display will be all we know as truth. For example, if I choose to stare at a box that displays people just like me, living their life by means of wealth, constant alcohol consumption, fashion obsessed, meat-eating, contradictive liars, I am most likely going to absorb that as an acceptable way to live life. Just like if I every day watch a woman and a man sitting at a table telling me about all the awful things happening in the world. Headline: 1 million soldiers dead from the war, thanks to the terrorists. Use fluoride toothpaste for healthy teeth. Your vote for president matters. Buy this car magnet to save the poor children in some country. Should a 5-year-old only child being raised by a mother who is a part-time stripper in Tampa, Florida, be convicted for premeditated murder? Or should the mother be evaluated in contempt? Dun, dun, dun. So, if those are the headlines I'm constantly being exposed to, then I'm probably going to be a scared, unhappy, miserable person who's afraid to do anything unless someone in that box tells me to. Ella agrees. So, if the allegory of the cave has taught me anything, it's that you have choices within choices. I might always be ignorant to some extent, but I don't know how I would ever know the whole truth to reality if there are always going to be some degree of guards keeping it from me, right? But I do have the freedom of choice. Now that I know there are choices within choices, so then I can continue to live in complete ignorance, if I so choose to, or I can choose to continue my newfound conquest of reality and what exactly it consists of, because now it's just kind of like the doors are open to any possibility. For example, since I know meat is inhumane murder of innocents filled with chemicals that I can't even understand their use in anything constructive, let alone animal byproducts, I would be a complete fool to continue to purposely poison myself with that. And although I've been informed of this information and I want to save my fellow prisoners, I want to go back and unshackle them and say, hey, look, this is the truth. Let's do something about it. I want you to be healthy. Let's be healthy together. These prisoners, they want to blissfully kill themselves with this poison because it's what they've been fed since they were young, which is their choice. While my choice opens doors of the search for complete truth. Their choice keeps them in the dark, lit only by a small dose of artificial light, while my choice, like the light, just keeps shining brighter and brighter and brighter, and the path continues and continues and continues, right? So, you know, the choice is yours, but I think it's wise to keep in mind that you don't know anything until you start to know something. So, I'm going to leave it there on that note. I hope it gives you something to ponder about and consider. All right? Good luck. Love.